Hey guys, welcome to our AMA. It's been a while. We've had a lot of new followers to our social media accounts, especially Facebook. So we decided it was time to kind of let you guys know what we're doing and give you an opportunity to ask some questions. So that's what we're doing. And Adam is going to start this off with a question or two.
I'm going to be the one asking the questions
He
here,
is.
and I'll try to help answer it, but mainly Brendan's going to do the answering. I got him here in my handy dandy mobile smartphone. So let's kick it off. Brendan,
Yeah,
how are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
I already asked you that in the last video we
Yeah.
made, which was done just like 20 minutes ago. All right. So the first question that we have here is, what is the 5-year plan for Atlantis Sea Colony?
I'm going to just start it off with a bang there with a big one. But yeah, all right. I mean, all
It is
things,
2020 right now.
it is. 20 so by 2025 where do we want to be? So
Hopefully underwater.
well, that's true. You know, obviously I'll answer these in a ideal scenario, barring finances, more pandemics, who knows what's going on. But Atlantis Sea Colony, the vision for Atlantis Sea Colony has always been to provide a way for humans to be able to live, work, visit the ocean, regardless of age, handicap, anything like that. We don't want there to be barriers for people to be able to visit the ocean and spend time there, to wake up looking at the fish and stuff along those lines. Obviously, you can do tourist submarines, but even then, some of those, you have to climb a ladder, and some people can't do that. So, in the 5-year time, obviously, we want to be at that point where we have the technology is there, working on proof of concepts right now, and that's where our first build, phase one, is our proof of concept build, where we're testing out. Does the designs work? Do some of our ideas work as far as bringing people to an underwater habitat without them having to know how to scuba dive, and that's or getting wet in any form. So that's the big one. I want my 92-year-old grandmother to be able to come visit if she so chooses, and short of some sort of a platform where she can walk from the land to the underwater hotel, whether that's through some sort of a tunnel, whether it's a shuttle, like a mini sub, or whatever. That's not going to happen. So the 5-year plan is, in short, to have set up underwater habitats accessible to anyone who wants to visit them.
Yeah, and kind of to tag on to what you were saying, that's a term I'll probably use a lot, is tagging on, because that's kind of just what I do. We talk a lot about, especially with the prototype, it's going to be it's not going to be the sexiest design right off the bat. It's just a proof of concept, making sure it works. It's the very first thing that we're going to do. And then from there, you can only go up, but technically we're going to the bottom. Sorry, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, and one of the things that we're constantly talking about is being cost effective too, because this isn't going to be the cheapest thing to do, but we also want to make this be a affordable type venture for people too. So we want to look into be able to obviously make sure these things are safe and sound, but also find cost-effective materials, cost-effective assembly processes, and just whatever it is to make these affordable for people, whether someone wants to buy them for personal use, whether it's a resort or something that wants to buy them for their facilities, and then just make them affordable for people to stay the night in them for a few days, whatever it is. So yeah, that's one of the things that we are looking at from start to finish, is that we want to make sure that we make it economically, financially friendly. What, both of those terms, I guess you could say. So anything else you want to tag onto that, or do you want
No,
me
I
to go
think
to the next one?
no. Let's go on. Let's kill them because that was basically the answer. As the 5-year plan is that obviously we could expand upon that, but we don't want to look too far down the road at this point in time. Let's just stay where we're at.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
All right, so this kind of ties in with that. Do you have anyone currently building a viable underwater habitat?
Us personally, no. And really, I guess there isn't anybody out there currently building one. There's the as we've talked about in other videos and podcasts and stuff like that, the Aquarius Undersea Lab, the reef base off the coast of Florida, which is open to the scientific community. And then there's Jules Undersea Lodge, which is open. It's in Key Largo in Florida, lagoon down there, and that's open to the public. You can scuba dive down to that. And those are the only two really in the world right now. There's other entities out there that have plans. And the thing with me being involved with this for so many years now, I've seen so many of these come and go over the years with these great designs for them, and just for whatever reason or another, they haven't succeeded. So when I say there's other people out there with plans, those could all change tomorrow. They could fold. They could evolve into something else. But no one at this point in time is building anything that I'm aware of for an underwater habitat.
A little bit of gray area with that is, like you said, we aren't at the moment. We would like to be. But some people that are doing a lot of cool things right now is, if you guys check out Ocean Builders, they're in the seasteading category, but I mean doing a lot of similar type things. And in our podcast, we actually got to interview Chad Elrotowski, and he works with the Ocean Builders, and they just have like this giant 3D printer. They got one of them. I think they're getting a few of them. Don't they want to have a few up and running? I think that's what their plan was. Maybe I have that wrong. Either way, so like one thing that kind of goes back to the first question, where they're working on trying to find like cost-effective ways of doing it, and then having the right kind of machinery. So check them out. I would recommend doing that. They're doing a lot of really cool things, and we have a pretty good relationship with the seasteaders, and sharing information, and obviously shared interests too. So, yep, we're not doing anything at the moment. Hopefully soon, but there is people that have a lot of the tools that can get us there. So,
and it's not because we're not trying to. You okay there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right now, especially right now, we're in the middle of the Corona pandemic, so even communication with some vendors and stuff like that's been slow. So this has really put a damper on a lot of people's lives, and worse than ours, obviously. But yeah, it's a slow go, but we'll get there. Just maybe not as soon as we wanted to.
Yep, it's the almighty dollar is basically our biggest hurdle right now, but we'll have that opportunity, I think, very soon. I'm going to save this next question for the end one because it's just a good outro question. Sure. How will you contend and engineer for shifting and seasonal currents?
Yeah, I think that, with the current design structure that we're looking at, you look at Aquarius, who's out there in the ocean, and they're pretty far out there. They really don't have issues with it. I think as long as your foundation is solid, and you're down there, and you're not like in a major current, there's not going to be any issue. The only thing I can say about being close to one is you can harness it for electricity or something along those lines. So there's the pluses to that, but it's really not that as big of a deal. I think I don't know if we're going to talk about hurricanes and stuff, but I think they come into a bigger concern than the currents do. But really, the question is, there's not much. I mean, be well footed in the seabed, and make sure you're weighted down good, and avoid major currents.
Yeah, I mean, really, you can tie this into, you really have to kind of, what's the term we use in the manufacturing world? Benchmarking, not benchmarking. Sorry, but basically just emulating what other businesses do. And I think of like the offshore oil derricks, where they have to be engineered and structurally sound to withstand it, because a lot of those are in some of the choppiest and most violent waters. And yeah, it goes back to what Brendan said, where it's really a matter of being anchored down and having it just structurally sound. And there is a lot of, I guess, variance, depending on the depth you're at, and then depending on where in the world really you are. There's a lot of bodies of water that really don't experience a lot of rough currents, and that's something that we've kind of learned with. Once again, we've learned from the seasteaders. They've kind of sought out a lot of different locations that don't have on record really a lot of violent waters and stuff that makes it just more peaceful and calm to be at. So yeah, there's a lot of variables that go into it, but really, if the place that you want to put one of these is in more, I don't want to say the word treacherous, but where you have more aggressive currents, where you do have um, more to hold up against, then yeah, it's just a matter of being anchored down, and that's one of the big things that Brendan obviously has been working on, and um, making sure that, I mean, that's really the first step in putting anything underwater, is making sure you have a super solid base or an anchor, however you want to say it. So that would be, I guess, the quick answer to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question, buddy boy. Um, how can you construct without destroying natural and sensitive biosystems? We get this question a lot. Do you mind if I take the lead on this one first?
Yeah, go for it.
It's the only one that I feel like I'm comfortable
Sure.
answering. So once again, I don't want to keep bringing up seasteaders, but one of the things we've learned from them is one of the things that they've gotten this a lot too. And when we got a chance to talk with Carly Jackson, um, they have a lot of times when structures enter the water, they could become, what do they call it, aggregators or something like that, where basically it tracks life forms. So there's a lot of different, I guess, scientific methods of where you can actually turn structures into like artificial coral. So when we put these underwater habitats down there, it's not going to be a structure that's meant to displace or ruin anything. Sure, the very first day that you drop one down, yeah, you might scare the fish away for like a day, if even that, just because something's dropping into their area. Just like if an anchor or fishing line or something or a rock fell in the water, it's going to scare them off. But ultimately, one of the things that could happen and probably would happen is it actually attracts more biodiversity into the area. So really, one of the things that I guess the misconceptions that we get is that we're going to ruin things, when there's a very strong possibility that we're actually going to improve things. And one thing that Brendan, you always say, is that it's like, how can we take cleaning up the ocean and protecting the ocean seriously when we don't have to see it day to day? So when we start living underwater or visiting the ocean more, and we're seeing it, that's going to inspire us to be more proactive about keeping it clean and protecting it. So I'll defer the rest to you, but yeah, I mean, we get this question all the time, and that's not Brendan and I's first priority, is to destroy anything. We're not going to find the Great Barrier Reef and go take a chunk of it out and then put a thing down there. That's not how we want to go about doing this.
Yeah, I think we got some other questions later on that kind of deal again with the ecology of the whole thing. But just from a business standpoint alone, it just good business sense for us to keep the environment as clean and pristine and beautiful as we possibly can, because that's what people are coming there to see. And nobody's going to pay to come visit some place if it looks like trash outside. So, just from a business standpoint alone, it's crazy to think that we'd want to trash it. But I get where people come from, because they see what we do here on Earth with pitching garbage and stuff like that. And, and we've got a history of not taking care of our surroundings and stuff along those lines. But I think that's why it's important that those of us that are the first ones doing this, that we're setting the precedent, we're setting the rules, as it may be, to how to properly colonize the ocean. You covered almost everything else there. I mean, it's to say that we're not going to disrupt the environment at first is false, because anytime you bring a alien structure of any sort into the environment, it's going to disrupt it. But yes, it will be minimal and hopefully very temporary as we start getting up as the fish start to come to check it out, and we start setting up the different programs and whatever to draw attention, rebuild coral, whatever it may be for that environment we're in at the time. But yeah, I mean, you covered most of the stuff on that question I was going to answer, so I think you handled most of it. So yeah, like you're saying, my policy is, with the ocean, it's out of sight, out of mind, I guess is the term I use. And I think that's how often we are. The ocean is right there. We can go visit it. It's to a lot of people, it's not anything. It's so big that like, how can we damage it? But if we're there and we're underwater and we can see the effects of what we're doing, will that not cause us to stop and think, hey, maybe I shouldn't be throwing my cans into the ocean or whatever?
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
the rivers, really, because that's really what it starts as, the rivers.
Right.
But yeah.
And I think that's what, I mean, it's sad that we're in a spot where that's that we get that question. It's a legit question, and I don't want to downplay that, but because of other people's negligence and other people's inconsideration, we, when we talk about, our business plan, we kind of, to some people, look like bad guys, because it's like, oh, well, so many other people have already done this much and now you want to do this. Well, it's like, if other people would have just like started being proactive about this stuff from the very beginning, none of this would make a difference. So, right. I mean, we got to hold people accountable to, other people that just like, don't dump your stuff into the ocean, and don't support businesses and whatever that do that, and just do what you can to do every little part, that you can to, keep plastic and garbage and stuff out of rivers and oceans and lakes and whatever it is.
Right. And one of the questions that we're not answering here, which my mistake, I was going to put on here, but ties into this as well, as a lot of people we've had ask, well, hey, why don't you clean up the oceans before you start putting something else into it? And fair, but there are thousands of other companies out there doing that. That's not our business is why. That's not our purpose, is to clean the oceans. We'll leave that to people who that is their purpose. But at the same time, we're not there to try to destroy it. We're not there to add to the problem either. But that is not our focus. We're not there to clean the oceans. And I want to get that out there. That's not meant as any sort of negativity whatsoever. But it is, when somebody asks you in a business sense, what is your why? It's not to clean the oceans. It is to help colonize the ocean and be a catalyst in that. So yeah, we are going to do our diligence to keep it clean, but we're not there to clean it.
Yeah. That'd be a cool episode that we should do for our podcast sometime, is talk about some of these, because there's a lot of really cool companies out there that have come up with a lot of different methods and like little machines and all this stuff that are doing like a really good job of collecting and cleaning. So maybe we could ever find one of those guys to come on the show, or just
there's a really cool one that's cleaning the rivers. That's why I mentioned the rivers, because they're putting these barges, these automated things in the rivers to clean up the rivers. So yeah, plus all the businesses that are like specifically recycling ocean plastic to make products. So, but yeah, very good question, and I'm sure we'll continue to get it. But that's a pretty good, thorough explanation of it. Kind of tying in with that, what's your plan to deal with sewage and waste? So this one, I think I mentioned
the golden question.
It is. This is honestly, when I researched and designed, this is probably the hardest question, because there are multiple things to do. There's multiple laws too, depending on how far out in the ocean you are. Can you just dump straight into the water? And you can in certain places and stuff along those lines. But once again, it goes back to creating a pristine environment. That's not obviously what we're looking at doing. And once again, we talk about the seasteaders and stuff, but they are a huge organization that has a whole lot more resources than we do. So they've done a whole lot more research into this stuff too. And they've actually got a great video about this exact topic. And it's all about composting. And if that's not the answer that people, the nice thing about this is there will be different solutions going forward as the technology and stuff grows, whether it's a microbial aspect where it dissolves all the waste and then we recycle it, or whether it's composting where it's separated out and used for plants. There is different ways of dealing with it, and I don't think any one way is right or wrong. And that's something else we're going to have on the podcast talking about that is somebody about this. I'm actually working on that right now, trying to get somebody on to really dive into this subject because it is an important subject, and it's one that I think people often overlook, but it's difficult too, especially, NASA spent, I think it's like $14 billion on their toilet for the space station. It's something ridiculous like that because it's such a huge aspect of what do you do with this. And how do you make it work? Obviously, there's this hardcore, this weightless environment, but it was the engineering aspect of the thing. So there's not trying to give a non-answer here, but there's just different ways it can work. And, the composting one versus the microbial version, really, it depends on the environment you're at. And a lot of it has to deal with also what laws and stuff are in effect and all that. So it's down to one of those two, but it's definitely not pumping it out, dumping it in the ocean.
Willy-nilly.
Yeah, I mean, you could put a pipe and push it down a mile or something like that. You could, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a septic tank or something along those lines.
Right.
But it was, once again, it'd be attached to the habitat so that once again it's taken care of. So once again, there's several different platforms that could be used and will be used moving forward.
Yeah, and one thing that I think about a lot is, and this ties in with how are we going to power it? How are we going to get fresh water and all that? And one of the variables that comes into play there is depending on how far off the coast you are. So say that we had a habitat that we were able to sell or put somewhere like at a beach resort where it's just like not that far off the coast, like within swimming distance or something like that. Well, then you have the option of hardlining stuff where you can hardline power, you can hardline water, you can do all that stuff. But say you wanted to set one of these up miles and miles off the coast or whatever, well, then you have to come up with a different solution on how you're doing that. You have to come up with a different solution of power and water and sewage.
And
so
go ahead.
And I was gonna say, so really, those are the two things too. So, and each one has a solution to it, or each one has an option about it. And whether it's like you said, you have like a mini septic tank that just has to come get emptied by a ship every now and again. Like say it got pumped up to the surface on a buoy or something like that. I don't know what it would be or some way of doing it, but there's different ways of doing it. The technology's there. No matter what, there's a way of doing it. It's just finding what makes the most sense based on the situation.
Right. Once again, it comes to real estate too, thing, because you can completely clean it and reuse it, but it requires a bunch of systems and stuff in order to do that too. So yeah, and I completely forgot what I was going to say just a second ago, but yeah. So
yeah, I think we gave a good answer to that there's multiple ways about going about it. That's I think at the end of the day, and maybe is what we could do with this video, Brendan, is put some of those like other videos in the
link in the description. Mm-hmm. I agree.
But yeah, like we said, come check out our podcast because we do want to try to get an expert on the show who deals with this kind of thing. So that way we can learn from them and you guys can learn as well. Next one is, are there tremendous roadblocks from the insurance industry to building submersible habitats?
Depends where you're at in the world. A lot of it boils down to that. You're going to have insurance no matter what you're doing. But from the legal aspect of the thing, if you're associated with the United States or in their waters, they're going to have a whole set of rules and regulations that you have to abide by versus if you're off the coast of Mexico or off the coast of Spain or some other foreign nation, that they're going to have different regulations and rules associated with that. So are there tremendous roadblocks? Once again, it comes down to the dollar aspect. but no, not any more than ensuring any other craft, I guess, to an extent, to try to simplify it as much as possible. Is like you have certain criteria you got to meet, and here's what here's what the insurance is going to cost you, and here's what's going to cover, and that's what it is. And then as far as legally, again, as strict or as lenient depending on where you're at in the world and what those laws say there. So ultimately, it boils down to where the habitat is as to how that question gets answered. And so, yeah, I guess that's it. Obviously, we're still looking at different locations. I've got in my head different places I'd like to put them, but we're not there yet, and so we're not talking about that yet. So,
well, and then one of the questions that we get with that, and that I've asked a lot of times, maybe not even really a question, more of a statement, I guess you could say, is that one of the things that we are concerned about, and I think is a valid concern, is the thin line or the mystery behind what international waters is. And because technically if you're in international waters, you don't have to abide by a country's laws, but then there's these, I don't know, other maritime laws, rule, I don't know how you even get into it. And then it's like, do the countries recognize that, and what kind of problems you get into with that? So I mean, you stick an underwater habitat in the middle of the ocean somewhere, is some country going to see that as an act of aggression? Are they going to just be super curious about it?
yeah,
It's there's a lot of mystery behind that. And I mean, I don't want to speak for Brendan, but I can't imagine that the first one we want to drop in the water is going to be something that we're going to want to test international laws with, and like try to test our limits with governments and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the thing also, when you're getting that far out, you're getting pretty deep water too. So it's not even at this point in time even feasible. So yeah, it's going to be I remember what I was going to say earlier on, hopping back to the what to do with waste. We see the different, and sorry if somebody's watching this all over the place here, but you look at Jules, like we talked about earlier, Jules and Aquarius. Both of them have two vastly different ways of dealing with it, because Jules is so close to land. They've got electricity and air and everything is piped directly in from land, versus Aquarius, which has a buoy for their communication and power and everything from that. And then their bathroom situations are both vastly different too. So yeah. So once again, the different scenarios have already been played out to an extent. But once again, it's on such a small level, with them both being these small habitats, that, as we grow, neither one of those are going to be feasible for a growing colony. Sorry.
Yeah, a couple. No,
sorry I hopped around there, but I wanted to get that out there.
How are people going to do the stuff they need to do ashore?
So I had to get clarification on that question, but basically, how I think it dealt more with, if you're working or you're living underwater, how are you going to get back and forth, and how are goods going to get transported there, and there's, once again, there's several different ways of doing that. You could either have a sea elevator that has a platform above the water, and you can go up and down. You drive a boat to it, come down. I personally am not a huge fan of that, even though in some situations that would probably work. Just because I like the not necessarily knowing there's a habitat there and have a huge platform there. Now, right. unless you're partnered with somebody that, say the sea setters or something like that has something floating above, then you're working in tandem or something along those lines. That makes sense. But for everything else, I look at a submersible. You have these tourist submarines, and you could easily modify one of those to leave land with your crew. You come down, and it docks to the habitat. You come in and go, and it's just like any type of ferry or a shuttle service that comes and goes. Or in some situations, especially if you're needing a lot more, especially if it's a pretty large, if you had a bunch of habitats or something like that, we're looking years down the road at this point in time, but it has some sort of like a hyperloop system,
Right.
that, would transport goods, people, whatever, back and forth too, tied to the land. So again, I think it depends on how big the situation is. Once again, the nice thing about this is, as it grows, all these different solutions will work differently for where you're at and who you are. Maybe you'd prefer to have the privacy of, you can only get to me via a submarine, or if you're a much more commercial operation, you're going to want to have a tram of some sorts coming to you on a regular basis. So again, both solutions. For me personally, the submarine is the one that we're going for first. I think that for me, I just prefer, unless I'm shown better or otherwise, that's the route we're pushing forward with.
Right. And you never know. Years down the road, we could have like a submarine Uber situation.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, hey, I got my own personal submarine. Just get on your app and I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Well, that's the thing too. There's a bunch of different companies out there. You've got Deep Flight, who has personal submarines. You've got Sequester. You've got Triton. All these different sub companies out there that build personal submarines. That totally.
Yeah, we need to get one of them on the podcast too. Yeah. This AMA's brought up a lot of things that we're like, hey, we should get them on our podcast. Okay, so two things left, and there's that one that I want to save for the last, but let's dive into the one that we need to talk about and we don't want to talk about.
Oh yeah, that one.
Okay, so let's talk about. It's so stupid that we have to talk about it, but let's talk about the logo for Atlantis Sea Colony and all the problems that we've been getting with that. Do you want to preface that?
Sure.
For us?
So when I came up with the Atlantis Sea Colony logo back in 1993 or 94 or something along those lines, I liked it. But even back then, I was like, man, all right, it's like a pyramid. Somebody's going to call me out for being some occultic thing or Illuminati. Nobody ever did for the longest time. So I was like, all right, cool, whatever. Well, it's sat the same way for 25 years. So I had a friend redesign the logo. It's sleek. It's sexy. I like it. It's cool. It sat there for probably about a year or something when we started boosting posts and getting more and more people into it. Then all of a sudden, people were like, oh man, you're a pedophile organization. And I'm like, what? What are you even talking about? And so then they started shooting me logos. And it's basically, at first I thought it was just a reverse. It's not the same logo by any means. If you look at them, they're not the same. But they're similar enough. And I've spent so much time and effort exhausting on defending a logo that we're tweaking, having the logo tweaked to avoid any confusion. I hate the fact that we have to do this, but it's such a waste of my time that I decided to go ahead and do this. And it's just frustrating. And you can sense the frustration here in my voice over this, because people keep on messaging and keep on saying, oh, you guys are, sort of this pedophile ring or whatever. But yeah, you got anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's and when it started, it was just like one.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, someone would bring it up, and we're like, "That's weird." Whatever. Like, why do people know what a pedophile logo looks like, anyways? But then, like you said, as we started getting more and more followers, the frequency of it happening did happen a bit more. And so, I mean, I was one of the people that told you, like, hey, we should probably just work on getting just because, I think it's a cool looking logo, and I never knew about this.
Yeah, it wasn't until
obviously it's not something I went and looked forward to be like, hey, is there an organization that went as far as branding for pedophilia?
But here's what I will say about the thing is I'm not changing it again. So if people are finding some fault in this logo, whatever. I mean, that's the problem with, I say, people are always going to find something in whatever logo you out there. I mean, look at the Monster Energy drink. People are saying like the thing is sick,
satanic.
Something along those lines. So people are going to find something, whatever, with the logos. It's just, we're early enough on, we can change it and not cause that big of a problem, and I might as well do it and just be done with it at this point in time. So the logo is getting changed. We are not affiliated, nor do we condone pedophilia in any way. So we are on the record now for saying that the logo
Yeah,
was
we have
never intended.
videos, a
Yes,
video of us saying it. We've had multiple like text conversations that
yes,
we've had to make that declaration. And and like I told you, when we've discussed it offline or whatever, is like if when I shouldn't say if, but when this becomes a big business and it's more recognizable, it's better to take care of this issue now than then. I mean, I'm sure like if Elon Musk's logo for SpaceX had some sort of weird connection, that'd be the last thing he'd want to be dealing with while he's trying to put rockets in space. Is be, here, are you a pedophile?
but if you rotate that X slightly, it's an upside down cross. So
yeah,
that's about the extent where our logo is too. But
yeah,
but whatever.
yeah, and yeah, that's all we'll say about that is that it's changing. We don't condone anything like that. We're not associated with any of that stuff, and yeah, that's the end of that. So, the very last question, the one that I said that I think we should save for the last because it's a good outro question, is how does a common person like myself become involved with your organization?
So there's a couple different ways. I mean, the biggest one, honestly, is following and sharing our content. I mean, obviously we talk about the almighty dollar, and that's important, but brand recognition, getting our name out there, and cementing ourselves as a track record of here's what we are, here's what we're doing, and having fans along with us for this ride is huge. It was 2 years ago, I think, when I really started to push again after being dormant for so long. We're up to over 1,400 people on Facebook, going from zero. So
right.
That's my bad for not doing it earlier, but here's where we're at, and it's already after that. So I remember we did a video, I think, at 200 people, and at that point in time, I was just shocked that we had 200 people following it. Now after 1,400, and we got lots of good people commenting and stuff like that, and I covet those comments and stuff like that. I love people engaging and talking. So there's that, obviously. Shooting us a private message on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, saying, hey, here's my interesting thing. We're always looking for volunteers that want to either feed input into us, help us out, or whatever, or get the name out there. Maybe you have a skill set that we're all looking for. We know that we can definitely use some help here and there. And the last one that I've got, at least, and you can add on if you want, obviously is our Patreon. We're going to be putting out a video about the Patreon, explain a little bit more, but basically, this is going to happen. I'm self-funding it for the most part right now. And it's going to happen sooner or later, but it can happen a whole lot sooner if we get people backing it, short of investors and stuff along those lines, which may come. I've already talked to a couple investors over the years. But your $1 a month, $5 a month, or whatever it may be, not only allows us to, possibly get better people involved, but also allows us to quicken the R&D development of the habitat and then get them out there. So if there's the one thing that, I would say is all those share an equal, in my mind, an equal amounts of importance. But I think that we've done horrible explaining the Patreon aspect of the thing because we've been so focused on, communicating via Facebook or whatever, and pushing those things. That Patreon is as important to me, and I think to you as well, as Facebook or you shooting a private message that wanting to help out and stuff along those lines, because it is. Without money we can't make the thing happen, and I'm all in. I'm throwing as much money as I can at the thing to make it happen. And so anything people can do to ready that along, I greatly appreciate.
Yeah. To extend the Patreon thing, I mean, that's going to help us do a lot of things. Even like you said, if we have 1,400 followers, even if say 400 of those people donated $1 a month, that gets us a tremendous ways closer to accomplishing. That's $4,800 a year or something like that, or more. I'm lost with my math right now, but yeah, you get what I mean. And that goes to helping us do some outreach. That helps us I mean, before this COVID-19 crap, I mean, we were going to go speak at a space development conference. You know, we were really looking forward to that. Not only be able to have an opportunity to speak on behalf of the business, but um, meet a lot of really cool people that could help us out with this project. So, I mean,
And with that too,
2020 has been a crazy year so
yeah,
far.
and same thing with expos and stuff along those lines. We love to
Yep.
have booths set up at expos, and so once again, that costs money and time, which the more money equals the more the more we can do. But yeah, back over to you. I just want to interject that real quick.
And then rest assured that Brendan is so frugal and financially tight that he's not just going to waste your money. He's going to make sure that we're utilizing it as best as possible. So
You should see the car I drive.
oh, you're calling that van a car? But yeah, and then like you said, outside of that, I mean, if you have a strong interest in it, please reach out to us, because even if you can't help us right now, I mean, we've had people that have reached out to us that have spaces that we might be able to utilize for building. They might have certain certifications or certain educations that could help us, that when the time's right, we'd like to reach back out to these people. So whatever your background is, it doesn't matter. If you have a strong skill set and a strong interest, I mean, let us know. And if we can utilize your help when the time is right, we absolutely will. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. So by all means, let us know and keep in contact with us. And like I said, our biggest thing is right now that we communicate the most with is on Facebook. So we have a really cool community growing there. Yeah, Patreon, talk to us via our social media, check out our websites, share our content, help spread the message, and listen to our podcast too. That helps. Other than that, I mean, I can't think of any other specific ways that people could join in.
But if you got ideas, we're welcome. We're all ears. Yeah.
So I'm the social media manager, and I could use help on figuring ideas. I'm getting the word out better too. So, but yeah, that's really kind of what we got for today's AMA. And obviously, we want to keep doing these. So, as you have questions, we're going to save them, and then every so often we'll do one of these videos.
Right on. Yeah, I think that's a good wrap up right there.
All right. Well, thanks guys for the questions, and obviously, like I said, keep in contact with us. All of our social medias, just go to any social media and look Atlantis Sea Colony, and you'll find us. Our Patreon that we just talked about, patreon.com/Atlantis Sea Colony. So thanks guys again.
Thank you. Have a good one.